How do you evaluate whether you want to have a company buy back of stock versus selling to new or existing investors?
Yeah, I think John touched up on a little bit. So I think, ultimately it's really a strategic decision to a certain extent. I mean, company buybacks, to start with that maybe, I think the company buying back stock, that means like the balance sheet of the company is used to buy those stocks, and that should really only happen if the company has excess cash that they don't know how to use, or the company believes that they're going to do a primary or just did a primary and just don't want to involve investors in a secondary. And it really should normally only be done for like smaller transactions for a venture-backed company. That's generally the rule there. Like, let's say employees leave and they do not want those employees who left have shares in the company. So like the company could just do a buyback for a relatively small transaction and clean the cap table up. As John said, the company is really in charge of the cap table, which is one of the huge advantages of staying private, because once you become public, you give that control up who your investors are, because anyone can buy your shares. And so that's like a huge benefit of staying private. You can choose who you're going to work with, and you should not let go of that control. And we can talk about later how that sometimes happens, even for private companies, where you lose that control because the black market's basically taking over. In terms of coming back to your question, so whether you use new or existing investor, that's really up to the company then. So as John mentioned, it's a huge opportunity a lot of times using a secondary to basically be able to bring in a strategic investor that otherwise couldn't be accommodated because you don't necessarily want to dilute yourself further, but using a secondary transaction to bring in a new strategic, and at the same time providing liquidity to employees and older investors who may no longer be the appropriate investor at the stage where the company's at now. So between new and existing, it's really a decision of the company. I think one thing also to mention there is, like, if you use an investor who's used to doing secondaries, there's a lot of complexity that are involved in secondaries, so it's also a benefit using a Tiger Global or someone else who done various secondary transactions before and is used to buying common stock or previously stock that is lower in kind of the pref stack, and understands how to price that and understands how to deal with that transaction. One thing that's important to know is, like, I know we have a lot of CFOs here, and I'm actually kind of curious, like, who's already done a secondary transaction in their current firm or their prior firm? Okay, relatively few. So who's thinking actively about doing a secondary transaction? Okay, great. So one thing for those who are thinking about a secondary transaction, whether you do a company buyback or whether you use new or existing investors to do that secondary transaction, you as a company will be involved in that transaction. And that's really important to know, because you're either going to set the price or the terms, or you're going to negotiate the terms on behalf of employees.